Hello, everybody, and welcome. I've got something exciting in store. I'm here with Matt Shaffer, who many of you will know. He's an empowerment, relationship, and connection coach. Hey, Matt, thanks for being here with me.
So happy to be here, Jack. I've been appreciating your content for a long time. I'm so excited to be here with your tribe. Such cool women.
Awesome. There's a little bit of music here in the background. I don't know if that's my end. Are you hearing that?
It's all. You know what's funny is that our live popped up on my phone.
Oh, okay.
I got it muted though. We're good to go.
Okay, because I'm hearing like a ton of pop music right now. So you're not hearing that? That's funny.
A ton of pop music? No.
Hey, Nikki, welcome. Okay, I'll try and figure that out. So in the meantime, let's kick off with a question here. By the way, if you're joining us live, please shout out in the comments. We'll try to get as many of them as we can to as many questions. I see we've got about 45 people live with us here. And Matt, by the way, is offering this awesome free program. It's called Mastery of Connection. There's a link to it. It's the first and only link that you will see in this video and below this video. And we're going to talk to you a bit more about that. Let's kick off with a question here. By the way, if you're joining us live, let's ask you a question, Matt. So, Matt, what do you find is the most important thing if a woman's listening to this and she wants to have more connection with a guy? Matt, by the way, is offering. What's the most important thing that you found that helps with that? There's a link to it. It's the first.
Honestly, the thing that I find, like I work with women around how to create both personal empowerment within themselves and better connections with men. And I find that there's a common pattern that women. I'm definitely hearing some feedback on your end. I think we're going to.
I think I solved it. I think I solved it. We're using some new software here today, so bear with us. But I think we got to go.
This is our learning curve. But this is awesome because now we're going to be able to. And are we split screen, buddy, or am I like a little box up in the corner for you?
I'm seeing you split screen. So
beautiful.
That's my experience.
Perfect. All right, beautiful. All right, so ladies, let's talk about this, right? When you're in relationship, like you're coming up against patterns, right, with men. And so what I find so often is that women are getting frustrated with men because they don't feel understood by them, right? Is that something you encounter a lot, Jack?
Yep.
And so, like, women are frustrated because they're like, my man doesn't understand me, or these guys, they keep acting in a way that, you know, isn't in alignment with what I want. And a lot of times it's really easy and very tempting, I know, ladies, to blame men for them ghosting you or them breadcrumbing you or them being inconsistent with you, right?
Yes.
That's the pull, that's the drive, right? And the question I always ask my clients is, how is this a mirror for you? You know,
right.
and
yes.
that, and it's like that sometimes can hurt. And please, ladies, let us know in the comments what comes up for you when I ask you that question. And you can tell me if you're mad. You can tell me if you don't like it, because here, every way that a man treats you is feedback for you. So if a man is ghosting you, if a man is breadcrumbing you, if there's like just a lack of, if you're not getting what you want, of course he has a role in it, but it's not his fault. This is not about anything being anybody's fault. It's about you taking responsibility for what you're bringing into the relational container.
Yes.
And really asking yourself, you know, what is the way that this man's treating me, telling me about how I'm showing up? And what can I shift?
Totally.
You know what I'm saying?
So let me ask you this. So if a woman is experiencing, hey, I'm being breadcrumbed right now, do you have any sense that that's a reality that could shift in the actual relationship? Or do you think it's more about recognizing, hey, I'm not into this, I'm going to take a stand for what I want and move on?
I think because that's the thing. There's no one universal reason that men breadcrumb, right? That men pull away, that men are inconsistent in the way that they show up for women in relationship, right? So there's it's all about asking yourself questions. If a man is breadcrumbing you, if a man is being inconsistent with you in the way that he's showing up, first off, you want to ask yourself, you know, like, are you showing up consistently for him? Or are you coming into the relational container with your walls up? Are you coming into your connection with him, you know, with your wounds, front and center. Because if you're showing up gaming, because so much dating advice out there, Jack, and I know you can recognize this, is highly strategic, lean back, don't give him too much, be very calculated, right, in the way that you connect with him so that you can get the guy or like whatever, and I find that if women come into the container with this like gamey mentality of I'm going to do and say and text a certain thing and only give him this much to make sure that, when women come in with that manipulative, and with the right intentions, they want relationship, and I get it. But like men can tell if you show up, with this sort of agenda.
Yes.
Like men can tell and they will respond in kind.
Yes.
So we talk about it being a mirror. Does that make sense?
Totally. A few quick hellos here. We got a couple of YouTube stars here. We've got Helena saying hi. We've got Clayton saying hi. Hello to all of you that have said hello. We've got Toronto, New Zealand. We've got Oregon. I think we sorted out all the sound issues. So thanks everyone for your feedback on that. And guys, if you want to ask an actual question, please put a question there. And if you can put like a little Q or an asterisk or anything in front of it, that will just help it pop out so that we can recognize it amidst the comments. So what I hear you saying is that the way that you go into the relationship is really important. And you said something interesting. You said if you're coming from a wound, that's going to be impacting what's happening. The guy's going to pick up on that. Can you say anything in any more detail about that? How would I know if I were approaching a relational container from the place of a wound? What would I notice?
Well, I mean, I can speaking from the male perspective, like when I get into connection, I get into relationship with a woman, I can tell if she's looking at me, from the perspective, like she's looking at me as a person or she's projecting the wounds of her past onto me, right? So if a woman comes into that connection and she's coming right off the bat with all the things that she doesn't want. And this starts as early as in your dating profile. Like if you're online dating, if you're doing that, and a woman, like you can tell if a woman's operating from a wounded place, if on her profile, she says, I know what I want. I'm not going to settle for this and that. I'm not going to do that. And she's like aggressive in the way that she frames herself in her dating profile about all the things she's not going to tolerate. That's automatically a woman that, to me, doesn't seem like she's coming from a warm, heart-centered, open, inviting, not coming from a space of possibility.
Totally.
Which, if you look at the interdependence of the masculine and the feminine, right, we are craving with our connections with women, we're craving being set free by the feminine. Like that is what men are dying to achieve, right, in relationship with women. And if women are coming in with, a lot of pain and a lot of, and they're projecting that onto the men that they're connecting with,
right,
it's automatically like we feel like we're not being evaluated on our value.
Totally.
And it'll cause a men to disconnect.
So let me ask you this.
Pull back at the very beginning.
So my imagination is that the reason someone might do that, where they're like, I'm not going to stand for this, is probably that they've been in a connection where they've maybe undervalued themselves and they've eventually had to like respect themselves a bit more and take some kind of stand and cut the connection and push away. So if someone listening is in that sort of situation, what do you recommend to them? Because it might be that it was a necessary move to break off the previous connection and take a stand for themselves, but you're sort of saying don't let it bleed forward into the next connection. How do you do that if you've just recently learned I'm taking a stand because I've been treated badly by men?
Well, I think it's really important to look at your past relationships. And anytime one of my clients, is released from a relationship that isn't fully serving her, I always say it's a time to celebrate, right? This is a celebration, right? And what can we learn from this relationship, right? Like there's a lot of valuable lessons that you can learn sort of when you evaluate, what happened, right? How did I set boundaries? How did I value myself as I came into the container? And then how did that play out? Like if you didn't set boundaries proactively and lovingly within your connection with this man, and then you ended up having to end it, cool. Okay, perfect, because he didn't respect you. So now moving forward, how can you be more proactive in standing in your power? How can you be like a loving invitation, right? Because I talked a lot about boundaries. I did a live yesterday all around this, and it's so important for women to, from the very beginning of a relationship, from a loving, inviting space, I like to say set positive, constructive boundaries. Guide a man towards doing what you want him to do instead of constantly reprimanding him about what you don't want. You know,
Got it.
like you want to continue to be, because men have this mama trauma phenomenon where if a man constantly feels like he's being, disciplined and told, no, don't do that, don't touch that, don't do that, it's not time yet, stop it, every man's a little boy.
Right.
Yeah. And every man is holding on to a little bit of that, oh my God, I'm in trouble with my mom, in the back of his head.
Yes.
And women can activate that in relationship, and that is not going to create the polarity and attraction that you want. You never want him to see you as his mom.
Yeah. All right. Let me ask you another question here, which is a question that's come in that I wanted to ask you anyway. You said that men are yearning to be set free by the feminine. What do you mean by that, and how do you do that?
I mean that if we look at the masculine and the feminine, we both are craving, we can do things for each other in relationship that we really have a hard time doing for ourselves. And that's why I talk about interdependence, right? It's not codependence, it's interdependence. We can do beautiful, expansive things for each other. Now, the masculine is looking to be respected and acknowledged for what it's doing in the world, right? Because the masculine is this building, creating, driving force in the world, right? And we want to be acknowledged by the feminine. Like, nothing makes us feel better than be acknowledged by the feminine for what we do, which is such a profound gift that you give us. And it can be as simple as, thank you. I thank you so much for holding the door for me. That makes me feel really special. It can be as minute as that, right? Or it can be, I so respect and admire you for what you're out there creating, right? For how hard you work. Like, men are dying for that acknowledgement, right? But the other thing that the feminine can do that I think is even more important is to set us free. Because for God's sake, I mean, Jack, I know you can relate to this. We spend so much time, we have vision for our lives, right? Especially if we're, really driven men, right? Mm-hmm. We have a vision for what we want to create in the world. And, this, like, we're trying to create legacy, and it's a heavy responsibility. Like a purpose-driven man is taking on a lot. And he's got a lot of responsibilities and a lot of duties. And you, as the feminine, one of your greatest superpowers is to help us, give us a sanctuary to put down the weight of what we're doing in the rest of our lives and just play and just be free and be emotionally vulnerable. Because out in the world, for a lot of us who don't do the work that you and I do, emotional vulnerability is a liability or a weakness, at least in our heads, right? So we don't talk about our feelings. We're emotionally isolated in all other parts of our life. But with you, with your woman, you actually have a space to speak what's in your heart, to be vulnerable, to talk about what's coming up for you. If you create that space for us, if you lead the way with vulnerability and with being heart-centered, and that's such a powerful tool that you have to really help us feel free and feel safe and feel light and just let us play with you,
awesome.
And that covers all parts of life, communicative and physical and all across the board. I mean, even the act of sex, right? Men are seeking, there's a freedom just in the act of physical connection with a woman,
Yeah, right on. Thanks. Okay, I got another question for you here.
This is about that stuff.
this is from Helen. She says, what if he is coming across spineless or wishy-washy? How would I change that in myself? So, like, is there anything that's going on as a woman, my side of the fence, if what I'm kind of seeing out there is a guy being spineless and wishy-washy?
100%. And let's start by looking at the language that you're using. So you're characterizing him as spineless and wishy-washy, which means that if I'm looking at the relational container, if we look at the relational container, which is, the primary visual that I use in my coaching, there is a masculine and a feminine side of the relational container. And for a relationship to have polarity, which is the natural magnetic attraction between you and your partner, he gets to spend the majority of his time on the masculine side of the container and you're on the feminine, right? So that creates polarity. And if you're saying that he is being wishy-washy, and spineless is a very dismissive, derogatory way of describing him, which means that probably he is feeling very emasculated. And so he has shifted out of his masculine, and you have assumed you've moved over in to the masculine side of the container because you don't feel safe. Because circling back to that masculine and feminine interdependence, the feminine is really yearning for the masculine to help her feel heard and help her feel safe. So that's why the masculine, one of the greatest things the masculine can do is to hold space for a woman to talk about whatever it is that's in her heart right? And to, with his physicality, to help her feel safe. If a woman doesn't feel emotionally safe within the container, she will shift into her masculine.
Yeah.
You know, which will then make the man become more emasculated and more in his feminine. So I want you to look at how you're showing up to him. How much have you become this like pressing, driving, masculine, demeaning force in his life? And ask yourself, how can I help him take his power back? I mean, I had a client recently who was with a great guy, and she had come out of a terrible marriage where she had been betrayed savagely by her husband and blew up her whole life. So she came into that relational container with this new guy with huge wounds, catastrophic wounds. I mean, beyond anything I had ever seen before, right? And so she was hounding this guy because this guy wasn't as physical as her, didn't want to have sex with her as much as she did. And she was getting more and more aggressive and pushing and getting more and more frustrated with him. And I asked her to look at that. And I'm like, do you really see how masculine you have become in this relationship? Like if I didn't know, if we just looked at the script and I didn't know who was talking, I would assume that you were the guy, you know? And she had this moment of clarity where she's like, oh my God, I've become the masculine person in this relationship. And as she stepped back from that and she started becoming, doing a cycle, which I call the invitation and space cycle, where you invite a man to step into his masculine and then you give him the space to do so. Mm-hmm. As she started to do that, it's incredible how this guy started showing up for her and doing all these grandiose gestures and stepping into his power. And now they're getting married and they're like living together. And it's beautiful.
Got it. I mean, so there's kind of like a hope in that sort of story that actually this stuff can change within an ongoing connection. It's not just like, the polarity doesn't exist here. It can actually improve in the connection.
100%, yeah, and that's the thing. Masculine and feminine energy are highly dynamic, highly fluid forces, right? And so as you step into your feminine, you create the space for him to be in his masculine. Just recognize that both of you can't be on one side of the container comfortably. It doesn't happen. You can't both be there. If you're going to step into your masculine, he's going to have to step into his feminine. Otherwise, it's a war. If both of you are in your masculine at the same time, it ain't pretty.
So here's a question I like from Becky. How do I tell if a guy I feel unsafe in a way that will invite and open rather than attack and hurt?
Well, I'd love to hear a little bit more about how she feels unsafe, because the context around where she's not feeling safe is going to guide how she asked that question. But I think rather than telling him, "Hey, you're not making me feel safe," you would want to encourage him into a course of action that would make you feel safe. Like, wow, I really love it when you tell me, you know, how much you care about me. You know, like let's try to do that a little more often. You know, rather than say, I don't feel safe with you, so you need to step it up. Right? Like, what would be a way for you to encourage or invite him to engage in actions or communications that are going to make you feel safer? Right? Because if he feels like you're sitting here telling him, I don't feel safe with you, that's emasculating to him. That a lot of times, especially if a man is already not feeling super strong about himself, that's going to put him into a beat up space and actually make him shrink down even more. Like, you always want to be inviting him forward, inviting him up, inviting him to rise, and then giving him the space to do so. You know, that's a very, that's just a visual that you can use, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I get that's ideal. I have an imagination that if a woman is having the experience of, I feel unsafe and contracted right now, making that kind of invitation may be a little bit beyond capacity at some times, you know? So maybe there's also just a distinction in here of, if you've got a communication context in your relationship where you can actually name your experience without the other person taking it on, right? You could just say, hey, I notice I feel a little unsafe. You know, could you put your arm around me? You know, or, hey, I notice I feel a little unsafe. I'm going to wait inside. Could you come and get me from inside rather than I'm waiting on the street? Or, you know, something like that's going down. So then you really include your experience, but you're not actually telling him what needs to happen. You're making a request rather than making a demand. And, you know, then he gets to kind of play with you more easily. Most guys want you to feel safe, right? It's quite a primal guy thing, right? To want that protection, to want to be that protector. And it also is one of the weak spots, I don't know if this is just me speaking, but like if you have the experience of I'm not doing that well for you, that's like, God, that's like my prime duty, and I'm failing at it, right? So most guys want to respond here.
Well, then this is the thing. The primary thing that I keep guiding women back to is that fundamentally, like, men want you to feel good. They want you to feel safe. They want you to feel appreciated in relationship. And also, we're not mind readers. So it's very important for you.
That's such an important point. I just want to underscore that. Like the whole, like, we're not mind readers. It's like, if you could just pop that bubble and just get that if he's not doing something that you want, you've got to learn how to put a request in there. Your life will go better. Yeah.
A loving request. And so I love how you said, say your feeling statement that, I'm not feeling safe. And then also make an invitation for him on how he can make you feel safer. Because, that's a huge component, right? Like, it's like, it would be like if you reject a man who you want to hang out with, but you can't hang out with him that night. Be like, oh, well, I can't hang out with you for Valentine's Day, but I'm free the week after. Give him. Throw the guy a bone.
Throw him a bone.
If you do,
this is Matt's bone teaching. Yeah, awesome. So look, if people are kind of enjoying you, Matt, here, and they're riffing on what you're saying, you've got a free opportunity for people. Maybe you can just take 30 to 60 seconds and just kind of lay down what that opportunity is.
Absolutely. Well, what happened is that I work with women around the world, and what I found is that with every client that I work with, the same foundational components need to be established in order for them to create meaningful relationship with men. And so I'm like, why don't I create a course around this? So I created a course, Mastery of Connection, that really is going to give you the tools and the foundation of who you are and how you connect both with yourself and with other people out there in the world. And it's a super awesome course. It's 4 modules over the course of 4 weeks, great video content that I've created from scratch, and you get group coaching with me, group video coaching with me twice a week in the container. We cover beliefs, we cover attachment style, your personality type, how you can connect and shift the way you connect with other people, and then your vision and your values, and how to really create that relationship of your dreams. I mean, it's a full-blown transformational relationship and connection course, and we got over 1,000 women in the Facebook group, and it's an amazing experience. So I'd love to offer you guys an opportunity to come in as a beta tester for my course. We just started. We're still in our first week, so you got plenty of time to jump in and get just a ton of value and a lot of live coaching with me. And it's a super cool community. Like, these women are just like, they're so motivated and they're supporting each other on this journey. And it's beautiful to watch. I love being a part of it.
Awesome.
And it's free. Totally free for you ladies.
If you want to be part of it and you want to take advantage of this free opportunity, you can just click the link below this video and fill out the form there, and then Matt will be in touch with you and let you know if you've got one of those spots. So we've got a few people here asking us, we talked about breadcrumbing and ghosting, and we put that in this title. One of the questions here, what exactly is breadcrumbing? I'm curious if you've got any sort of definitional guidelines of like, what is the minimum amount of connection that suggests that we're in an actual relationship, rather than, hey, actually he is kind of breadcrumbing me, and that's not just me being anxious attachment, that's not me being over demanding, that is sort of somewhat objectively what might be going on here.
And yeah, I love that question. And you know what? I'm really resistant to creating like an objective standard of what is breadcrumbing. Like, for me, because relationships are so intensely personal, it's that for me, the definition of breadcrumbing is when you express, lovingly and openly and clearly, this is the standard of communication I need to feel safe in relationship, and a man says, okay, I get what you're saying, and then just refuses to do it.
Okay, so for you, the primary thing is actually safety rather than necessarily connection.
For me, it's, a woman has been clear around what she wants as far as, as far as level of connection, and a man is just unwilling or unable to give her that, and he's purposely intentionally not fulfilling what she needs as far as like level of connection, and so that then you get to ask yourself, right, as a woman, like, okay, well, what's in the gap, right? Like, what's in the gap with this man and with this situation, and that's why these check-in questions are so important. How is the way this man's treating me a mirror for me, right? And how I'm showing up, like, am I demonstrating value to this man, in the manner, am I demonstrating to him the amount of value that I know myself to have? Do I know my value? Have I set boundaries with him, right? And are you standing in your power with him?
Mm-hmm. What about the situation where two people, and this doesn't just have to be that the woman would want more and the man would want less, but they have differential connection needs and desires, right? What about if the guy is just much more happy spending time on his own, or he's super focused in on his work and he wants the relationship.
Absolutely.
But actually when she says, hey, just to use your thing, I want this level of connection, he's like, that doesn't actually feel authentic and true to me, or I don't feel available for that. Do you think that's just, okay, we're probably incompatible? Or do you think there's something that the woman can do there to keep meeting the needs that she has for connection?
Well, and I think that there's two things to look at there, right? The first thing is the capacity for intimacy that both people possess. And I talk about this a lot it comes up a lot in the course in Mastery Connection and with my clients, right? But like, if you're with somebody who, if you're, anxious or secure attachment style and your partner is avoidant attachment style, then you two fundamentally have different capacities for intimacy, right? If he is deeply career driven and that's the season of life that he's in, where 70% of his time and his focus is on his career, and you're not in that space, and you want more, you want 50%, and he can only give you 20%, then there are different capacities for intimacy, either situationally or fundamentally between you and your partner. And then, nobody's wrong or right. Nobody's the bad guy in the situation, but you get to really look at objectively, is this a relationship that's going to serve me or not? Is it worth it for me to sort of accept less connection than would feel good for me for some reason? I'm not here to tell you to do that or not do that, right? But it's the starting point for a conversation with you, because the last thing you get to do is settle for less than what's going to make you happy, because you have this story that there's no other options out there, or this is as good as you can get, or anything. I feel like a lot of women have a tendency to do that, to settle for 60% of what they want or 40% of what they want, out of a fear that there's that they can't get 80% or 90% or 120%, right? And I think that's just a dangerous game to play, because we all get to trust and have faith that, we will get the kind of relationship that we stand for if we have the courage to stand for it from a grounded, empowered place.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, any of you that have just joined us, I'm here with Matt Shaffer. We are live streaming. Matt is a empowerment, relationship, and connection coach. He's got a free program that he's offering. You can check it out. Click the link below this video. Here's another question that just came in. What's an example of being feminine and also holding strong boundaries?
Well, I think one of the most powerful feminine things you can do is create loving boundaries with a man. And this is a common misconception that a lot of women have, is that boundaries are masculine. And I do not believe that, and I don't agree with that. And so let's first reframe the concept of boundaries, because boundaries are not bad. And boundaries, like if you're setting boundaries with a man and you're doing it the right way, a man's not going to be like, oh, that chick's a dude. Like, a guy's not going to think that. If you set powerful boundaries with a man, it's actually going to elevate you. It's going to elevate your value in his eyes. Truly, like, it's a high value thing. A man wants to feel that a woman has a frame, right? I talk about the concept of frame a lot in my coaching, where that you have a frame. When you come into a relationship with a man, he has a frame and you have a frame. Your frame is who you understand yourself to be, what your values are, what you're comfortable with, what your boundaries are, what you're into, what you're not into. It's the frame. It's that frame around the masterpiece of who you are, right? And he has his. And when your frames come into contact, a lot of times what will devalue a woman in a man's eyes is if she just collapses her frame into his. and just becomes more or less becomes a doormat to him and agrees with it, whatever he says, and is into whatever he's into, doesn't voice her own opinions, and doesn't stand up for who she is or what's important
true
to
and
her.
real to her. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it's true and real to her. Yeah, and a man wants that. A man wants to feel your truth, and he wants to understand your frame, right? And he wants to know that you're strong enough to stand in your frame. So lovingly setting positive, constructive boundaries with a man is one of the most important ways of holding your frame. And you don't have to do that by telling him, I don't like this, stop doing that. That's not something, you can set a positive boundary. Like, I'm really enjoying spending time with you, and I really love connecting with you, and I'm enjoying kissing you, but I'm not going to feel fully safe being, fully intimate with you until, we're in an exclusive relationship. If that's a important thing for you, framing it in terms of, it will make me feel safe for us to sleep together once I know that, we're only doing it with each other. You're not saying, hey bro, put that thing back in your pants. I don't want that. You're not telling him that. You're talking from your heart, and you're letting him know why this is important to you. That's a high value expression to a man. You know what I'm saying? And that's very feminine. There's nothing masculine about that, about that expression. And so asking yourself, how can you express this boundary to a man in an inviting, heart-centered, warm, feminine way in all parts of your life? I mean, that's the way to do it.
So I've got a question here. I get ghosted as soon as I put a boundary or speak my truth. It's happened with too many guys. What would you say in that situation? I've definitely got some curiosity about how the boundary is kind of being set, and what the sort of what the history is with setting boundaries. But I have heard this quite commonly from women of like, people like me when I don't set my boundaries. And actually when I go to do that, it's not just that people say no. Sometimes they blow up on me. Sometimes it goes really, really badly. And so I think there is some nuance and subtlety in this territory.
There absolutely is, and there's always a pattern, right? And so I want you to look at, if you're consistently getting ghosted, right, by men after you're setting boundaries, then like, what's the common denominator, right? You're the common denominator, and so there's something inherent in either the type of men that you're attracting or in the timing or the way that you're expressing boundaries. That's, there's something going on there. It's not that all men are manipulative, or all men are just looking for one thing. I'm actually going to release a video on that. I think what a lot of women do is they create a story because they have a string of experiences that, maybe make them think that they decide that all men are like that. And it's truly not the case, right? So a lot of times I think what women will do is, in the initial stages of getting to know somebody, they won't set boundaries at all, right? And they'll just let a man roll in heavy. And then when a man's already fully in your life and he's imposing himself and everything else, then they say, oh, hold on a second. And then they go to set a lot of boundaries. And then he's like, oh, well, this wasn't what I signed up for. And then there's this, this breakdown around it. And that's why it's so important that from the very beginning, right, don't be afraid, because women are afraid, right? They're afraid, oh, if I set a boundary right now, he's gonna go away. And if he does, fantastic.
Like, that I think is a really important point. Right, that's an important point, because I imagine that's where that question is coming from. If you've been setting boundaries and then the guy ghosts you, I would say trust that he's not your guy, right? Yeah,
that's a blessing.
It's like using your boundaries as a filter in a way. If a guy really can never be with your boundaries, how are you going to have a mature relationship together?
100%. And a high value man, a man who sees your value and is in it for the long term, that has, a vision of getting to know you better, he's going to honor and respect your boundaries. In every relationship I've ever had where a woman has, stated a boundary to me around whatever aspect of our relationship, I'm like, fantastic. Thank you for sharing that with me. Because here's the thing, ladies, nothing is more frustrating for a guy than tripping over a boundary that he didn't know existed, and then having you get triggered and sort of like lash out at us. Oh my God, I didn't want you to do that. Or I didn't know that, did it. And then feeling, again, you want to talk about mama trauma, like getting in trouble with mom and not even knowing what you did.
Got it. One other thing I want to insert here, and just in case it's useful, is what I've started calling like under, over. And it basically means if you under represent your boundaries and you do it again and you do it again and you do it again, at some point when you go to assert your boundary, your ability to calibrate it somewhere in the middle as like a healthy, loving boundary is going to be very difficult. And probably what you'll do is you're probably going to come up with some resentment. You're probably going to be mad. Probably there's some unmetabolized anger. And so that can sometimes be the experience. If you go, oh, whenever I go to set a boundary, the guy disappears. Now, ideally, he wouldn't disappear and he would be able to contain you, even if, be with you, even if there's your anger showing up. But just be curious if that's going on, because it might be that you're actually over asserting a boundary. And then it's like, now this is my boundary. And actually, that's not the best way to help people navigate your boundaries.
1,000%. And there's two ways that can play out, right? You could have that building of pressure and then that over assertion of boundaries within one relationship, or it could be a building of pressure where, it happens over a series of guys, so that then the next time it happens, boom, you give it to him, and then he feels that projection, which sort of goes into what we were saying earlier, that a man can feel like when he goes a little over the line and you friggin' blast him, he knows that it's not just about him. He knows that you're projecting onto him a lot of times the wounds of past situations or a built-up frustration that you have towards your pattern with men, and that's going to causes a lot of men to check out or pull back, because they're like, I'm not being seen, I'm not being evaluated for myself. This woman is taking out her frustration on other men on me. And no guy likes to feel that.
Totally. So this is a slightly different angle of question. There's very minimal communication from my man whenever he's with his friend's family. How do I express I would like a little more communication from him?
When he's with his family?
Right. So then maybe that situation that when we're together, there's a lot of communication, but when he's actually doing stuff with other people, he's not really that available to stay present to the connection. And I think this is a common one that comes up in couples. So
it's a common one, and you know what? Like, I have in my life at various points in my life, I've been that guy, especially when I'm home with my family, like especially when I'm home
Homeboy
in
Matt.
like my bubble. Homeboy Matt. Yeah. When I get around my family, and I sort of just go off the grid, and one of those common, and so it's not that I didn't love, and this would drive my girlfriends crazy in college and in law school and various points of my life, is that like I'd go home and they just would all of a sudden I'd go from talking to them constantly all the time to like 2 days would go by without us talking, and they're like, who are you? Where did you go? And I'm like, I'm just home with the other people. It's not that I don't love you. It's just this is home, right? We have a tendency, especially when we get around family, to like revert.
Of course,
back.
It's the original program. Of course,
Jack. You get around your mom and dad, and let's be honest, you become like 16-year-old Jack, don't you? You want your mom.
No, man, that's not true. I've worked so hard at this. I'm so hard. I'm at least 17, 18.
There you go. You're 18. You want your mom to make you toast and jam and whatever English.
Dude, I told you I was gluten-free. You can't even have these things anymore. But yeah, I get it. There's a pattern. I mean, particularly in mine, since my parents still live in the house I was born in, right? So it's like, talk about like the length of history, and there's something awesome about that as well. But yeah, it's easy to revert.
So I say all that just to say that the first thing to do is to have compassion for men, because we have a tendency to revert back especially when we get around family, we get around old friends. Like your boys from back home, like we're going to revert back to whenever everybody met, 1920, like everybody just becomes a bunch of goons again, and secondly, men are fundamentally single focused.
Single focused. I was going to say that's probably a part of this. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we're wired to be single focused, and whatever is right in front of us in a given situation is going to be the primary thing we're going to be able to concentrate on, and we're not like women who are diffused focused, right? So having compassion for him and not taking his behavior personally or as a reflection of the way he feels about you is the primary thing, because then you can have because here's the thing, you can have this conversation with him two ways. You can have this conversation with him sharing what you need, because you've taken it personally and you're pissed off and you're frustrated with him and you're coming at him like, hey, every time you go home, you fall off the face of the earth. It drives me crazy. You need to stop doing that. You can come at it that angle, and maybe he'll do it. Maybe he'll, come around, but he'll do it from a Oh, I guess I have to do this.
He'll acquiesce probably more than find that place in his heart that
acquiesce.
wants to. Yeah.
Like a kid whose mom told him to be home at 9 a.m. or 9 p.m. or else, and or you can say, hey, like I love the dynamic we have when we're together here, in our space. And it feels like when you go home that I don't get the same type of connection with you. And, it makes me feel, which leads to me feeling, not fully seen or supported. Right. And so is there a way that we could work on this so that, we keep giving each other what we need, even when you're home or I'm home or whatever?
Yes.
Very
totally.
different,
I like that.
different ways of having that conversation,
Yeah, absolutely. Well, what I hear you do in some ways is you're stating the positive intent of the thing that you want, perhaps rather than reprimanding or criticizing or shaming for the thing that you don't. There's also probably just on a super tactical level, there can be a thing that I think you can train in guys, which could be something like, hey, if you're driving to see your friends, maybe you can just pop me a 1-minute call when you pull up, right? Before you've kind of gotten into it, just let me know you've arrived safely and that you care about me, and then go and have your fun. Or like there might be some little protocol, or like the moment maybe the evening's finished and you're on your way home, perhaps you can just pop me a quick text and let me know. Like there's easy things that you can sort of train in a guy that even if it's not his native way of orienting, if he gets that that's really valuable in your world and he cares about you being able to influence him, which by the way is a really good proxy for knowing if a guy is a good guy to be in a relationship with, then you can find something that might be a little bit more win-win,
Oh, that's super. I'm telling you, you want to turn a guy on. Like, give him easy ways to make you happy and fulfill your needs. Like, show him a roadmap of how you want whatever it is that you want. I'm talking over the phone, in the bedroom. Help us out. Like, we want you. We want to make you happy in all spectrums of life. If we're a good guy who's invested and wants to create deep, meaningful connection with you. And please, the more specific and the more heart-centered and the more positive you are with your guidance, like you're the conductor. I talk a lot. Another concept I use is a woman is the conductor of the heart. So you're the conductor on the podium, right? And you, through your invitations and your gestures and your beckoning us forward, you're giving us guidance for our actions. We're the musician looking up at you, looking for the guidance,
Right.
So give us that guidance and we will deeply appreciate it, especially if it only takes a minute or two to make you feel safe.
Yeah.
We'll eat it up.
Yeah. I like that. Yeah. It's almost an extension of your bone theory, right? It's like giving guys these kind of easy things that, where they can actually respond. And another thing I like about it is if you make it pretty simple, like a very simple request, like, hey, maybe you could just call me for 30 seconds, right? And if the guy is never willing to take that on or look at that, or maybe that doesn't work for him, but he comes back with a counter request like, yeah, I don't want to call as I'm going in because of this, but I'll text you or whatever. If there's no responsiveness there, I think that's really powerful information about whether this is someone that you actually want to invest in.
That's huge. Oh yeah, if a guy's always busy and he can't meet you, he can't compromise or meet you anywhere on that level. That's a major issue. Like you got to find something. Like I work a lot right now, and I don't spend. I'm dating a wonderful girl here in Florida, and I don't spend as much time. We don't hang out as much as I think either of us would like because I'm working so much, right? But we have this funny thing because she takes a bath almost every night, and I go to Trader Joe's more often than I should. Where every time I go to Trader Joe's,
it's a great place.
We FaceTime, and she's in the bath, and I'm in Trader Joe's, and we just walk around Trader Joe's, and I'm just talking to her, and that's just the thing that we do, and it's ridiculous, right? But it's like it's an easy thing where we just find a time to connect. Mm-hmm. We find time to connect in a way that works for both of us, when we're not able to spend time with each other, and you and your partner get to do that, like whatever type of a relationship you're in.
Awesome. So as a follow-up question here for you, yes, Matt, are you saying we have to treat men who aren't being good to us with kid gloves? Is that what you're saying?
Is that what I'm saying? No, that's not what I'm saying. So, like, let's look at what you say. When you say that men aren't being good to you, right? Like, does that mean that a man is being disrespectful to you? Does that mean a man isn't honoring your boundaries? Does that mean a man is ghosting you or breadcrumbing you? Like, I'm in no way, and I'm the first person to say, like, if a man is not honoring you and he's being consistently disrespectful or not, showing you the sort of love and the sort of attention that you're worthy of, then you're out. You're out the door. Like, zero tolerance policy for that. But I think a lot of women will dismiss a man and also dismiss the lessons that he's providing for you under the label of he's a bad guy, or, all men are this or that, and I think we can learn. I talk about there are 3 types of dates, right? There are good dates, which are amazing, and they're examples. You can learn from any type of date, and there are 3 types of dates. There are great dates where you can experience magnetism and how things flow and what chemistry looks like and all that stuff. Yep. Then there are milquetoast dates where the guy's all right, you're not really that into it, but he's trying, and that's great. And those dates are great too, because those are dates where you can practice standing in your power, and it's a low investment situation. You don't investment. Care.
You can remain authentic. Yeah, you can try things out. You can try different personas. It's all things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, try different personas. Try different split personalities. Whatever you're into. Like have an alias. I don't know, but no, like you can really practice empowerment in a deep way, because I know when you're with a guy that you really like, it's harder to be that authentic, grounded version of yourself because of a lot of times the nerves that you feel. And then you have bad dates, which I call dumpster fire dates. And dumpster fire dates are also awesome, right? Because they give you an opportunity to surrender, right? To surrender any outcome dependence and to look for a lesson or some sort of teaching from this terrible date, and to set boundaries in a powerful way and to practice ending a connection that doesn't serve you. So a dumpster fire date is a blessing too.
Wow. So it's kind of blessings all around in some ways. You're just practicing different things.
Exactly. It's like, what's the opportunity that's available to you from the man who is before you? Every man is an opportunity to practice something.
Right. Here's another question. How do you let a man know he can take his power back if he hasn't been in contact? I think that relates to something that you were saying earlier when you were talking about masculine and feminine dynamics, right? And you were you were talking about the invitation and the space, sort of like the space for the man to kind of reclaim his masculine power. I think that might be what that relates to. I'm not exactly sure.
Yeah, there's definitely a parallel there. And I mean, again, more details would help, but if you're making an invitation for him to step forward and be in his power, and you create the space for him to do that, and he doesn't take the space, and he does that consistently, where you say, hey, it'd be really great if you planned, this has happened with clients too, and this drives me nuts with some of my clients, right? Is, these are great women, they're incredible women. And I had one client in particular who was with this guy, and just over and over and over again, she would say, wow, I'd really love, because he was Mr. Last Minute. Mr. No planning dates until
Mr.
the night
seat of his pants. Right.
Yeah. The seat of his pants. I mean, he was a bartender. Not that that's here or there, but like he didn't have a really big, stressful, crazy life, but he manufactured drama in his life. And no matter how much she asked him to, step forward and step into his power with her, he just consistently wouldn't do it. And if you keep making an invitation to a man and then you give him the space to step up and be a man for you, and he just refuses to step forward, then for whatever reason, he's not ready to be in the type of relationship that you want.
Certainly not now. Yeah, totally.
He's just not your guy. And I'm saying he might be on paper amazing, right? The right guy at the wrong. He might just be in a season of his life,
right?
Where
Season's
he's
important.
Not able to do it.
Yep.
So the right guy at the wrong time is still the wrong guy. And that's a hard lesson, I think, for
Let's just double click on that. Just say that one more time, because I think that's really powerful.
Yeah, the right person at the wrong time is still the wrong person.
Wow.
Yeah. And that's something that is a hard lesson, I think, for a lot of us to learn. But like, it's one of the most important ones that you can learn, because your dream partner who's in the middle of a messy divorce is not your dream partner.
Amen.
Because they're in the middle of a messy divorce.
Amen.
You know what I'm saying?
Yep, I do. I think that's really well said. I wanted just to double click on that. So a couple of questions here. I actually might take a little stab at this. My boyfriend sometimes forgets our anniversary. It's very frustrating. How do we express this in a gentle way? So one of the things you might be able to do with this is to start with your own experience and just to lead with your vulnerability if it's possible, right? So to sort of say, hey, I feel a little tender and sensitive when it's our anniversary and it slipped your mind. Like I kind of can go into this story that I don't think you care about me as much, or I kind of feel like our relationship isn't quite so important to you, and that's just a story I'm making up, but I wanted to share it with you. So there's a way that you can lead from the impact on you rather than they've done something wrong. And then again, if you want to get a little tactical, you could also help him a little bit remember your anniversary by actually maybe planning something with him, or just saying, hey, I notice our anniversary is coming up next month. Like, can we put aside a day and, maybe you can decide what we do, or, something that actually you kind of team up on it if it's not consistently a thing that's showing up on his end with as much importance. Do you have anything to add to that, Matt? Or if not, I've got another question I can seed you with.
Yeah, well, you answered it exactly right. I mean, yeah, the two things: throw him a bone, for the bone.
If in doubt, throw him a bone. I like this. This is actually quite profound, I think. Right?
I think the bone theory. We are going to rebrand it though, because bone theory is not the name. I'm gonna have to find a different name than bone. But no, giving him help a brother out. Give him a little guidance. Give him a little heads up. Hey, I'm really excited about our, anniversary coming up, let's plan something really fun, and then make that invitation for him to take the initiative and plan the thing, because for dates, for some men, I don't remember anyone in my family's birth. You could put a gun to my head right now, ask me my mom's birthday. It ain't there. I can't do it. I don't know what's wrong with me. I cannot remember birthdays for the life of me. And so some guys, it's just dates are not their thing. And it doesn't mean that he doesn't love you. I love my mother dearly, but I cannot remember her birthday.
Right.
I'm sorry.
Okay, so we're almost kind of ramifying a little bit. It's almost a bit like love languages, right? Or this thing of in my language, it would be like, don't subjectify. Don't just imagine that because something's important to you, if the guy's not doing it, that therefore he's disrespecting you. You might just have to kind of teach him something, or partner with him, throw him a bone, or just not make too much story about it, right?
Maybe watch the narrative.
Right, because in the relationship, you could be the person that's actually, you remember the anniversaries and birthdays, and you might be able to help, a good girlfriend to Matt might be someone that does remember his mum's birthday, right? And that can support him, even while he's taking care of other things. He might be taking care of quality time, or, whatever the other vector of reality might be.
Exactly. I love to date Virgos because they help me clean, because that's the thing. And they're very detail oriented. They're structured, and I need that. So I love dating Virgos. I mean, that's just been a thing for me in my life, right? And
that's awesome.
Watch the story, ladies, that you create around a man's behavior, and do a little Byron Katie on it. Ask yourself, can I absolutely know this to be true? Can I absolutely know that the fact that this guy forgot my birthday means that he doesn't love me? Can you absolutely know that to be true without asking him? You can't. So watch the story that you create, and don't go into that spiral.
Right on. So I've got a question here about, and what are we coming up here on the time here? Okay, we're coming up to 50 minutes. We might have to we're going to take these. Maybe we can just have quick kind of single point answers to some of these.
Sure.
And by the way, if you've just joined us, I'm Jack Butler. This is Matt Shaffer. Matt's a fellow relationship coach, super focused on empowerment and connection, and he's got a free program that he's inviting you to be a beta tester on, or beta tester, if I pull out my American accent.
Beta tester?
Matthew, I mean, would it be possible to let someone be a beta tester for your rather good program? I would love that. I would be tickled pink if you would do that for a good person, would you, Matthew? I don't even know if my British accent's any good anymore. I mean, I go back to the UK and everyone just rips me for being American. So, what are you going to do? All right. So the question
here. You sound like Dick Van Dyke and Mary Poppins to me. You're as British as it gets, buddy.
Good. That's good. I needed that. I was getting a bit insecure. Maybe just quickly before I ask you this question, you could just say, for someone that's been through this, because this is not the first time that you've run this program, right? Is there anything that you would share as a success story or a common outcome? If someone says, Matt, this program is awesome because, what are you hearing? What's the dominant thing?
Yeah, this program is awesome. I mean, it's already transformed the lives of thousands of women around the world. We had 2,000 women in our first beta run. And I mean, if you want to really understand your relationship between your beliefs and the way that your beliefs create your reality and the way that you connect and communicate with other people and how that is a reflection of yourself. This course is for you. If you want to create better relationships with the people in your life, not just romantically,
not just
but
romantic,
with your family,
everyone, right? That's awesome.
All across, because the way we do one thing is the way we do everything, right? And so this course is fundamentally about transforming your relationships from the inside out, and we go layer by layer over the course of a month in supporting you in doing that. And I do group coaching with you twice a week.
Yeah,
and it's
a ton of value.
And
there's no real downside to this, ladies.
Yeah,
I'm using your term
and it's
now.
free for you as a beta tester. I just want your feedback and testimonials, right? That's what I want, and I've got hundreds of them, and I'm using all of that stuff to continue to make the course better. And amazing. I would really appreciate your help.
Yeah, that's great. Well, Becky just said, boom, I signed up. Great, thanks for doing that.
Cool.
So I just want to apologize. Obviously, I'm not going to be able to get to all these questions. I so appreciate your engagement and the quality of these questions. Adrienne saying...
That's a reflection of you, buddy. We talk about relationships being a mirror. The engagement and connection of your audience is a reflection of how...
This is an amazing audience community. Thank you. I really appreciate that. Yeah, I've done my best to kind of get to as many questions and comments as I can over the... I guess we're into about month 8 now of having this channel, and it's been really awesome. So thank you for that reflection. So cool. Adrienne says, I went on a great first date. Food, chemistry, lots of mutual interests. He asked me on a second date, texted all good, but then MIA. I texted him alien abduction. What is this mind game? Do you think that's a mind game, or do you think something else going on there?
I mean, and that's the thing. It's so hard to understand. Right. Maybe he's got 3 other women he's talking to. Maybe he got sick. Maybe someone in his family got sick. Until you know what happened from his end, which may or may not ever happen, I would invite you to resist making up a story and taking it personally and making a judgment against him or against yourself. Right. Okay. One of the greatest and most powerful and most attractive things we can do in dating is to release outcome dependence on specific connections with other people. Allow each connection that you create with another person to serve you truly.
Yes.
And you know what I'm saying?
I like what you're saying. So in my language, you're kind of saying be equanimous, right? Have some equanimity. Don't make up a story. Don't make it about you. Don't make up a judgment on him. Now, if that kind of guy texted you a couple of weeks later, right? And there wasn't really a substantive reason, right? It wasn't that his mother was ill. It wasn't that he suddenly got, flown to Saudi Arabia and was incommunicado. How would you feel about that? Is that setting a pattern right there at the beginning that this guy might just be like, yeah, kind of 2 weeks, I wasn't in touch, no big deal? Is that a red flag to you?
Not necessarily.
Okay.
I mean, you have one good date with somebody, and yeah, but there's still not an investment. It's not
right.
like you've gone out with this guy, or unless maybe you slept with him on that first date.
Let's assume
and now he's MIA. Unless there's something where there was a deep investment made by you that he subsequently disappeared on you. I mean, it's one date, right? Stuff happens, especially if he's busy, he's high value, he's got a lot of things going on in his life. Of course, you wanted him to follow up with you right after the date, but sometimes people get busy and stuff happens. I would invite you, especially if you really enjoyed the connection with him, to be open to seeing, is he open to a second date? But then if he does it again, if you go on another date with him and then it's another 2 weeks or another month, then he's just not able to focus. Yeah, then you have a pattern. But don't throw the baby out with the bathwater just because, he went off the grid for a couple weeks after one date. I think that's, don't be reactive.
What is your experience with unavailable women? There was another question earlier on that was also about women being unavailable. Is there a difference to unavailable men and how to overcome it?
To unavailable. So what is my experience with women being unavailable in relationships?
Yeah, because I've done a bunch of videos that in and around these topics of unavailability, and I've had quite a few comments come through of people saying, wow, hearing this, I'm just really noticing, or I'm owning up to the fact that I've probably been an unavailable woman, right? And there's obviously probably good reasons and background and past for that. Do you think there's big differences between unavailable men and unavailable women? Or is it more it's sort of like an extreme avoidant tendency?
I think that it comes from a different space. I think women a lot of times are emotionally unavailable because they've created walls to avoid getting hurt again, right? I think that that's a reason. Like, women are doing it protectively to protect their feelings from being hurt because they don't want to get emotionally invested in someone who can hurt them. And I think men oftentimes are afraid, men are emotionally unavailable because they're afraid that the commitment of a relationship or the attachment will take away their autonomy or their independence, or whatever sense of identity that they've created for themselves. So men fear a loss of freedom, women fear pain and being hurt. And both of those things, allow them to create walls to sort of protect them, to keep somebody at arm's length. And when you come into a relationship from that space, it becomes nearly impossible for, the two of you to really create a meaningful partnership. And neither is wrong, right? We all just want to be happy at the end of the day. So just because somebody is, emotionally unavailable, it doesn't mean they're a bad person. It just means that they've got some blocks and some resistance, and you could potentially, by showing up vulnerably and showing up, in your heart, you could help them lower those walls. And those are some of the most rewarding relationships, as long as they're done with respect. Not everybody's going to be just wide open on the first date, right? Sometimes it takes some time. And if a person's worth it, it can be worth it.
Totally. So just to come from a slightly different angle, Matt, is there anything that you'd like to be asked? Like, you've come on, given us some time here this afternoon, super appreciate it. We've all got a lot of questions. I really appreciate them. We aren't going to be able to get all of them. Is there anything that you would like to be asked? Is there anything that's kind of alive for you in your own kind of inquiry around relationships, or that you're kind of super excited about in your own teaching? What's got Matt's attention? What kind of bone does Matt need?
What kind of bone does Matt need?
You didn't think you were going to be asked that today, did you?
You threw me a curveball, and I think what I want to come back to is fundamentally that men and women are not nearly as different as I think a lot of strategies and a lot of books and a lot of everything have convinced us that we are. Because here's the thing, and I don't know if I'm talking myself out of a job here, but like men and women want the same thing. We want to be loved. We want to be seen. We want to be heard. We want to be honored. We want to be respected. And we might experience that in different ways, which is why it's important for us to understand each other at a deep level. But we got to recognize that the come from is everybody just wants to be happy, and that we can create deep happiness through relationship. Like, a big breakthrough for me in creating this course, and I talk about this, I unpack this in Mastery of Connection, is the paradox, the relationship paradox, the paradox of relationship, which basically states that we can actually be stronger and more vibrant as individuals when we have the secure base of a partnership.
That's like the premise of secure attachment, right?
That's it. Well, it's the thing. That's why people fundamentally crave connection, is because it's not like when we get into connection, we become codependent, weak people. But there's a common misconception out there that we need to be two independent islands that are in some kind of business association, and I know, right? Well, it's not true. We can be a stronger individual when we have the secure base of a partnership, and we are wired evolutionarily to connect and to be with each other. So let's stop demonizing each other and blaming each other for our own, stuff, and just take responsibility for our own happiness and find somebody who's a great complement and a great partner for us on our journey, And that's like the foundational DNA of the work that I do with women.
That's awesome. Yeah, I really like that. I'm just going to take a little squiz back through and see if there's anything that just kind of pops out here. So appreciate it. There's a lot of engagement. There's a lot of comments going back and forth as well. Is it okay to kiss a guy first sometimes if you're already in a relationship?
Hell yeah, absolutely. Women a lot of times have this, they're so paranoid about being masculine that they will not take the initiative. And I tell, you want to know how I transformed that relationship of that woman and that man? I talked earlier about they were ready to break up because of all the wounds, and she was so masculine in the container. because she was begging him to have sex, and he was like, I'm so overwhelmed. He was a very successful guy.
Right.
He was a very successful guy, a lot of money, big job, right? And I said, you want to make this guy feel special? You want to transform this relationship? Start voluntarily offering him blowjobs. And she started doing that. 6 months later, they're living together. That act, and not because of the physicality of it, but because he felt honored, he felt safe, and she took the initiative, because he was afraid to ask. He had his own trauma around initiating physical connection with women because of his past relationships. So by her initiating and taking that role, it made her more feminine, and it made him start feeling safe enough to ask for what he wanted sexually.
Wow.
And so that's transformative, right? So sometimes taking the initiative physically with a man can polarize the connection and make him feel safe enough to step into his masculine with you.
Totally. Yeah, and there can also be a sort of like a green lighting element of that, right? Just because you initiate, like let's say you go and kiss him, that doesn't mean that through the whole sort of encounter as it unfolds physically that you have to remain in the driver's seat. Right? It can be a little bit more like a catalyst. Sometimes as guys, we're not even really connected strongly into our emotions and our body, and just coming and kissing us or hugging us or holding our hand or something can actually invite us into a space that we might want, but that actually, left to our own devices, we're just going to be kind of chewing on business problems.
100%. Get us into our body. Set us free. Get us out of our head. Get us into our body, and be our sanctuary. Almost every man's main love language is touch. Almost every man. Like, it's a significant percentage.
Right. Yeah. It's definitely one of my top two.
Yep.
Maria Lucky says, I like you some, but your advice too centered around being kind and giving chances to men who haven't shown you enough respect. What do you say to that? I'm not reading Matt's advice in that way. Is there anything you want to say in response to that, Matt?
Yeah. Well, and I think that a lot of times, and this is my advice, will trigger women who have been hurt a lot by men, because they'll construe it as me just asking them to be doormats for men who aren't worthy of their time or attention. And I am not telling you to allow a man to treat you in a manner that you're not worthy of.
Totally.
I'm asking and inviting you to come from a loving, open place and trust yourself and have enough discernment that if you lead with love and respond with compassion is the mantra of my work that I've created. And if you don't lead with love, into dating and into relationship, if you lead with walls up, like I like to say, walls up and guns out, if that's the energy you bring into dating, right, then you're going to get, again, it's going to be a mirror for that, right? So be loving, be open, believe that, it is possible for a man to show up for you the way that you want. And then if he doesn't, be able to lovingly release him, not as an evil man, but as a wounded man.
Wow, you're talking about the loving release. That's an interesting concept.
Lovingly release the men and the connections that are not serving you and create space for someone who is. But you have to operate from love, because if you operate from pain, if you operate from cynicism, if you operate from judgment and, from all men are this or all men are that, you're not going to be able to foster and create. It's going to be a lot harder for you to foster and create, the kind of relationship that you want.
Yeah, totally. I think this leading with love emphasis is resonating with some people in here in the comments. And we've also just got a good morning from Australia. So maybe Australia's just come online here as well, which is fun. If you're just joining us, I'm Jack Butler, and I'm here with Matthew Shaffer, and he's an empowerment and relationship coach that focuses on connection, and he's also got a free program that he's looking for some either beta testers or beta testers, depending on which side of the Atlantic you prefer. And you can just click the link below this video. It's the first and the second and the two only links, so you shouldn't have too many complications there. And you'll be brought through to a type form where you can just type in some answers to some simple questions. And then if you're one of the lucky people that Matt selects to join in this program, you're going to be having some fun over the coming weeks.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Era says, "Walls up, guns out." Accurate. I sort of got this image of like being on the frontier, the American frontier, as we kind of go west, and we're like having a bit of a shootout.
Exactly. Well, yeah, and it's how a lot of women view dating as the Wild West, and that men out there are these, I hate to say it, dick-wielding bandits, who are just trying to rob and take whatever they want. And if that's the world that you live in, like, you will find cognitive bias, right? You're going to find men in situations to validate that. And I don't want that for you or for anybody.
Cami says, we're not about operating from love space. We are talking about being ghosted. Can you see a difference between them?
Can I see a difference between operating from love and being ghosted?
Right.
I mean,
like, are you saying even in that situation of being ghosted, you still just, hey, operate from love, compassionately move on?
Always.
Or is there a place to say, actually, I'm kind of, let's just say that we've had a real connection, right? That we've been connecting a lot, and then suddenly I just drop completely off the map, no word of a warning, completely MIA. I'm imagining that's going to bring up some anger. I'm going to imagine that's going to bring up some abandonment. That's probably going to bring up a lot, even in someone that's done a bunch of work and is super centered. So can we talk to that at all? Like, is there a place to actually say, yeah, I could feel completely angry and disrespected, and that needs to kind of get metabolized somewhere, even if it's not with him?
Oh, let it out. No, I 100% say love does not mean suppression, right? Like, love is also love of self. And one of the aspects of loving yourself is to allow yourself to feel and experience whatever's coming up for you. Like, if whatever anger, frustration, and I'm not saying you need to punish him with those feelings, but like, I invite my clients, if a man hurts them, if a man disrespects them, and they have a lot coming up for them around that, journal about it, write it out, burn it, scream about it, like, get it out. Like, I had a client literally, because she's still holding on to a lot of stuff against her ex-husband. It's funny, all these examples keep going back to the same client and her husband, but she still has a lot of anger towards her ex, because she's watching him go on and live a normal life and have a new relationship and all
That's really hard.
And she's furious about it. And I said, okay, well, now guess what? I'm him. And guess what? I'm happy. What do you want to say to me right now? What do you want to say to his new wife right now? And I let her cuss at me for 15 minutes. Right. And I held space for that. And she got to get it out. Like, don't suppress your anger or your emotion. And if you feel the need to share that with the person, and that's going to support you, do it. Just recognize that when you respond to anger and disrespect reactively with anger and disrespect, often you create a reactive continuum of escalating conflict that doesn't lead to a positive outcome. So if you want to sort of like release that for yourself, talk to your friends, talk to people in your life that care about you, and get it out that way. That might be more constructive than to blast a guy like with everything you got, you know, like.
Totally. I get it.
Because he probably won't care. Especially if he's a guy that isn't invested in you and you just blast him, he's going to then maybe respond in an even more unkind way. And this is how the reactive cycle of negativity.
There's nothing particularly great coming
doesn't
from that.
serve anybody.
Yeah, no, I get that. It might be different if you're really fighting for something in the connection and you're just kind of taking a impassioned stand for it. But ultimately, if a guy's really ghosted you, there's probably not that much to come back from. And that's not to exonerate his behavior. I just want to be clear. We're not saying, we're men that both like to think we can communicate a little bit, and we work on communicating better, right? And that's what we want for all men, right? Ideally, in all these situations, we'd be able to say what's true, and we'd be able to say it from our hearts in a way that's connected. And, most of us, and I probably include myself here historically, we don't actually have that capacity all the time available. So sometimes when a guy's ghosting you, it actually doesn't have way loads to do with you. It has a lot to do with him, right? It has a lot to do with his own shame that maybe he changed his feelings, or that he thought he was into you and then it turned out that he wasn't, or that he's kind of met two people and he's got like conflicting and mutual feelings. There's all sorts 100%. Of things that are going on over there. And it's hard to get into that reality because you're like, I feel so disrespected. I feel so abandoned. And I totally get that. And, in an ideal world, none of that would happen. We're just saying the reality is that ghosting is a little part of the landscape. And what's the most beneficial thing that you can do in response to it, and how can you learn from it, either that you're not going to go there again, or that you're even more rooted in your own center, your value and essence, that you're less easily rejected when a guy isn't the right guy to be with you.
100%. Yeah, ghosting can be a blessing too. Like it truly can. You know, if you can accept that every situation and every experience is specifically to serve you, and your job is just to understand and create an interpretation of that experience that serves you, then there are no bad situations. There are no evil ghosting men. You know, there are people that left your space so that you've got the space to call in someone who does honor and love and cherish you, you know, and thank God they got out of the way, you know?
Yeah.
Like that's,
I mean, the way I would hold that is I feel like that's like a sort of an ideal perspective if you can reach it. I can imagine that if I've been so hurt that really, you know, my inner child is completely hurt and abandoned, it's sometimes difficult to bring that perspective online. And I may need to just start with actually where I am as I feel really triggered and abandoned. And I might need some support, right?
Totally.
I need to just reach out to someone
100%.
and kind of be held. And
that, I have to sneeze, but I'm not going to sneeze. Okay.
I thought you were about to say something very erudite. I was like, wow, I'm here, I'm listening.
No, I was like, am I going to sneeze? No, I'm not going to sneeze. And those wounds, right? That pain that's coming up, what a beautiful opportunity for you to look at, you know, like, wow, okay, so what wounds are coming up right now? What can I heal? Right. What aspects of my own pain can I look at and can I work through?
Right.
You know, through that experience.
Yes. Totally. Okay. Different line of questioning here. Thanks so much for your answer to that. I appreciate it. What are your opinions on the concept of leaning back? Right. So I'm imagining that this is, you know, maybe I feel like I'm a bit more into the connection than he is, or he's not really super showing up. Like, should I lean back? Should I focus more on my own life and things that are bringing me joy? Should I kind of fill my cup elsewhere and then see what happens over here? Or do I just take my stand? No, you're not filling my cup enough, and thanks, no thanks.
I have a conflicted relationship with the concept of leaning back. Because on the one hand, absolutely, if a man isn't giving you, you know, everything that you want, or he's not showing up, there is value. It does create, it can communicate value for you to also, you know, okay, if you're not going to meet me where I need, I'm going to pull back, and we're going to see, like, leaning back can create the space for a man to step forward. And it can help you, it can help him understand that you're not just going to, you know, pursue him and devalue yourself.
Figure your life around him.
And the other side of it is that leaning back has become such a pervasive strategic element. And that I feel like what's happening is exactly a lot of women are so preoccupied with needing to lean back that they're actually forsaking the greatest tool to magnetize men that they have, which is their vulnerability and their demonstration of intimacy and their ability to connect and be warm and inviting with men. Like, they're so preoccupied with leaning back that they're not doing what we've established is the most important thing, which is throwing men a bone. Throwing men a bone. Bone theory. 101. Trademark pending. Pending.
Totally. Got it. Okay, so it's almost like it could be part of the mix. Don't do it from a place of manipulation, and remember that there are more important things, which from your perspective is the kind of the warmth of the invitation to the masculine.
Is always keeping at the forefront of your mind the interdependence of the masculine and the feminine, and that men are looking to be set free, and we're looking to be invited to step into our masculine, right? So give a man an invitation, give him the space, demonstrate to him that you are interested, that you do want to get to know him better, and invite him to move forward into that and then give him the space to do it. Right, that's the leaning back, is you create the space and the opportunity for him to be in his masculine.
So maybe that's a better way of framing it. Maybe it's actually more about, you know, rather than leaning back, maybe it's more about creating space and creating invitations, and also maybe about being very rooted also in your own life. Rather than it's like, oh, I'm leaning back from him, maybe it's just I'm fully calibrated to myself and my own needs and my own projects and my own life. You know, so then it's 100%. Actually, because it's actually making it less about him. It's actually making it more about you. And I think that foundation is important.
Because men can tell the difference. Man can tell if a woman is being elusive or leaning back, as a strategic maneuver, men can tell, like high value men, they can tell, and we don't like it because then we start to feel like we're in a calculated situation, and then we're like, all right, well,
Right.
if she wants to play a game, we'll play a game, but we don't necessarily want to do that.
Totally. We've got a few more people saying that they've signed up here. Awesome. Thank you.
Cool.
I think you're going to enjoy it. Question here. How do you earn the trust of a guy who's been hurt in the past? So imagine he might be bringing that hurt into the connection.
Yeah. Well,
maybe he's low trust. Depends. Maybe he's guarded in his heart.
Yeah. 100%. And this is a really, really, really important thing, right? Is because a lot of times if a man has been hurt in the past, I guess a lot of it depends upon how open is he to talk about it, right? Because a lot of men, if they've been hurt in the past, they got a lot of resistance to being vulnerable. Yeah, because one of the things that men are really terrified of is appearing weak to women that they care about, right? So, and a lot of men have this conditioned belief that vulnerability is weakness.
Right.
So
well,
if I show her,
women, I think, yeah.
Huh?
I think a lot of men and women, totally.
It's a human thing, right? And so, I mean, imagine as a man, if you were like molested as a child, or you have this deep trauma, this deep, dark secret, this pain, you had a woman exploit you and hurt you, break your heart and use you or whatever. That's something that, is going to show up in your relationship sort of emotionally, but it might be really hard for a man to express that out of the blue. Right. So you as a woman, one of the greatest things you can do as the conductor of the heart is to invite him when you see him struggling, when you see him emotionally like coming up against his stuff in some way, letting him know that this is a safe space. Like, hey, I can see that you're in pain. And, I'm not going to force you to do it. Because, again, a man doesn't want to feel like you want to get a man to shut down. Be like, why are you so upset? What's going on? And you try to force him there.
Right.
Not going to work, but to lovingly let him know, hey, I see you're in pain, right? I see you're suffering right now, and just so you know, I would love to support you. I would love to hear, what's going on and be there for you. If you ever want to talk about it, please, let me be that person for you. So that's one way.
Yeah.
And then also the other way is to lead by example. And whatever pain and whatever wounds, and you can even within that same conversation be like, listen, I understand what you're feeling. I had my last relationship, yada, yada, yada. And then lead with your own stuff.
Right.
So that he can see that you're willing to talk about it. Because it's one thing for you to ask him to go there.
Yeah.
But if you're showing him by example that you're willing to do it, that's going to create a space where he feels safe. Because you're his sanctuary emotionally. He can't talk about this stuff anywhere else.
Right.
For the most part.
It's almost like you going into the room first, and then if he wants to join you there, he can.
Yeah. So I like to use the visualization with my clients of like he's like this little boy who's scared and he's like underneath the kitchen table and you're like beckoning him to come out. You're like, it's okay, you can come out. You can come out, like this is a safe space. Right? Like because every man is essentially a little boy, either a scared little boy or a little boy who wants to play. And if you can see him that way, you're going to be able to see him with more compassion.
Totally. And yeah. I might answer this question is if I make the first move with a shy guy and give him my number, will he freak out? So I totally get this because I think it's not uncommon for women to have an attraction to a guy who is a shy guy, and you're kind of curious, like he's not making an initiation. Kind of what do I do? Do I just let it go because he hasn't initiated, or do I kind of step into it and make something happen or try? And I would encourage you to step into it. I think to the point that we were making earlier, just because you initiate once doesn't mean that you need to take on that role ongoingly. Some guys need a green light. Some guys, they just need to get through that threshold, and then boom, they're like, their confidence might come forth in a way that you haven't experienced. And if you give a guy your number, like, and he freaks out, that's kind of on him, right? I mean, I don't imagine that that's actually going to happen. Super likely is that he might feel kind of flattered, even if he feels a bit awkward in it. So if you know that there's something you want to see as possible with a guy, you know, we call it green lighting, just saying, hey, I'd love for you to take me out on a date, or here's my number, call me, or I may, you know, Friday night's available if you ever want to take me somewhere nice. Like kind of, you know, load it up so that then you get a clear read of if he's really not going to step through that threshold, probably there's nothing that's really going to happen there.
Exactly. Yeah. And just in my own life, I'll tell you point blank, I'm in an amazing relationship now, and she asked me out.
Woo!
And I'm not a shy guy.
Right.
She asked me out for coffee.
Awesome.
I was never going to do it. She had given me some indicators that she was interested, and I hadn't picked up on them. So don't assume that just because, you know, he hasn't made a move that it's because he doesn't like you. Sometimes we just don't see it.
Right. Totally.
So go for it.
I like that. I like that. Throw him a bone. Matt got a bone and he's here.
Back to the bone.
Here he is.
Always.
So I've got a question for you, because I wonder if this might be coming up. You know, when a couple of coaches like us kind of get on and talk about this stuff, right? Obviously, you and I are interested in growth. We're oriented to development and evolution. We care about relationship. We care about improving how we are in relationship. Mm-hmm. We try to do our best to communicate, and certainly know that that doesn't always go amazingly every time, but like there's a general sort of orientation. How many men have the orientation that you and I have, right? How many men can be in the conversation in the way that we're talking about? Does everything that might apply, like if you and I are talking from our personal experience, how much does that apply into the realm of men at large that people might be meeting in the world of dating and relationships?
That's a great question.
See, I just wonder if that might be coming up for people sometimes. You know, like are we sort of painting this picture of a possibility that they're like, well, what I've had is a lot of ghosting and some breadcrumbs and guys that don't really treat me right. And the thing that you're talking about sounds awesome. How do I know if that's even available? You know, or is this some bubble in you know, a certain part of Florida?
I'll tell you, it's much more likely in California, where I'm from.
I know. Totally. Says the guy in Boulder. I mean, yeah, sure.
I think if we look foundationally at men, just because men haven't done the work and they're not, you know, in the container that you and I are in of personal development, it doesn't change that fundamental craving that men have to connect. Like the purpose of human, and this is Brene Brown, someone that I follow and that I appreciate a lot. She did a study of tens of thousands of people across all cultures, all genders, every walk of life, and did a survey on what the purpose of life was, what they wanted from life. And the one conclusive thing that she landed on is that every type of human being, race, color, creed, economic status, we're all craving connection.
Wow. So that's just like a human universal.
Universal human desire is connection, right? And our individual relationship to connection might have gotten kind of squirrely because of our personal experiences with it. But at a deep level, just as much as you are craving connection, the men out there are also craving connection. And maybe they feel misunderstood. Maybe they've got trauma around connection. Maybe they've got fear. They've got baggage around it. But it doesn't change the fundamental reality that this is what they want. And a lot of times what men lack is the emotional agency to connect with their feelings, or to even voice or understand the fact that the reason they're so unhappy or they feel so alone is because they're not connecting with women. You know, they're just using women for whatever agenda that they think is important to them. You know what I'm saying?
Kind of like a means to an end, rather than actually valuing the quality of the connection and the sort of richness of what's really here.
And I witnessed this happen in my own life. I talk about my own personal experience probably more than I should. But like I watched my two best friends, who are dollars to donuts without a doubt, up until, you know, recently, up until their current relationships, two classic big league womanizers. Big league, you know. And so these women were a commodity to both of these men up until they met the woman that called them to a higher game and stood in their power. And to watch the transformation that both of these men, who are both, by the way, now happily married with babies, to watch the transformation that both these men underwent through the vehicle and the mechanism of their love for this woman and what she evoked from them was the most profound validation of the power of a relationship that I've ever seen.
Wow.
So like,
Awesome.
that's, I mean, talk about like, that's like the ultimate thing for, I mean, so this is what I'm saying, like, ladies, like,
you're talking about the power of the feminine to kind of call the masculine into something higher.
To call the masculine into a higher level of being. Like, you can create this for men. You know, who I didn't think either of these guys were ever going to get married, and both of them are now fully domesticated with the baby, and they're all in, and it's been profound to watch, right? So this is the superpower that women have, right? And so when women create this story, right, that all men are a bunch of ghosty, sketchy, you know, manipulative douches, when women create this narrative around all men, they're disavowing their own power to be the transformational force in the lives of men if they just have faith in who they are.
What a reframe. Yeah, I like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's almost like it's a subtle balance, isn't it? But guys want someone is gonna stand up to them and kind of tell them what's what. Not from a place of like finger wagging or you're completely wrong, but just like, hey, there's something more here. I see more in you. There's something more real. Right? That
exactly.
Most guys, certainly if they're at a stage of their masculine development where they're not just wanting to like run around and kind of, you know, have everything super casual, but if they actually want to take a stand for who they are and what they're capable of, mostly they're going to want connections or a deep relationship with someone that wants that for them, right? And can help them foster that. So that's 100%. Neat. I love what you're pointing to there.
That is what I'm pointing to. So do you have the courage, and this is what I talk about with the nature of love, like, do you have the courage to, you know, lead with love and compassion and, you know, not try to hide or suppress your wounds, but at the same time, don't let your wounds and your pain around men like distort and disconnect you and sort of like spoil the possibility of connecting with men in a real and meaningful way. Because if you lead with your walls up and your guns out and you're leaning back from the moment that you get to the bar, you know, and you're not willing to look at men and make an invitation to them because you're afraid of getting hurt, then, you know, it's like trying to drive to, you know, a different state in a car, but not being willing to get out of first gear. You know, you might get there eventually, but like, it's going to take you a long time.
Road, for sure. Yeah. Yeah. My experience is that a lot of people are crying out for real, right? They're crying out for a real connection, a real conversation, real intimacy. And often we're our own worst enemies in terms of fostering that, right? We might be keeping things, you know, artificially superficial or just kind of safe, or the kind of, most of us have personas that we're happy just to kind of run around in because they're automatic and they're normal and people accept them. And most people, if they're really given opportunity and they feel like they're going to be safe and they're going to be seen, actually want something more than that. They just may have not tasted it recently enough to know that.
And they don't think anybody else cares.
Right.
People are feeling so isolated because they don't think that anybody else cares about who they authentically are. They think that if they see my pain, if they see my shadow, they're not going to want to be around me anymore. But I think at a weird level, people want to know that they're not the only ones who are in pain. Of course. Right? So you can present your pain to a person. You can present the fact that you've gone through stuff in a way that actually creates connection with him, you know, as long as you don't project it onto him and lump him in with it, right? Like that's the thing. Like I love it when my partner, you know, shares with me, you know, what she went through. And some of my greatest relationships have been relationships where I have been able to, as the masculine partner, to hold space for a woman to work through her wounds and allow me to be that healing masculine force for her. That's transformative stuff for a guy. That calls a man to a higher game. That's what creates stuff like what happened with my friends and with me in my own life. My last couple relationships, I can take so much of my transformation down to my last handful of relationships I've had with women have been some of the most transformative experiences of my entire life. You know? And it's because of the power, the healing power that we can create for each other in relationships. If we're just willing to stop the games and the bullshit and just connect with each other and be strong enough in who we are to not allow our experience with another person define our value.
I like it. Well said. Hey, if you've recently joined us or if you've been here for the whole thing, like, thanks so much for being here. I'm Jack Butler. I'm here with Matt Shaffer. We're talking about relationships. We're talking about connection. And thanks for giving us some time. I know a lot of you would come to the end of your week on a Friday afternoon or early evening. Some of you have just woken up. It's Saturday morning in Australia, New Zealand. So thanks to all of you for being here. This is an amazing group of people, and the amount of comments and likes, I just super appreciate it. I won't be able to get to all your questions, but do please keep them coming. I'll keep looking back at them. Matt, for anyone that's just joined us recently, can you give us just a 30-second promo on the opportunity that you are offering people? It's completely free. You can just click the link below the video. Why should someone do that? What are they going to get?
Well, basically, Master Your Connection is a transformational relationship course that really helps you connect deeper, both with yourself and the people around you, really from the inside out. Like, I created this course because I wanted to sort of like make a container that covers a lot of the work I do with my clients for the first 3 to 4 months of our working together. Because until you lay a foundation of who you are and how you connect with people and the impact that your beliefs have on your ability to create relationship, you're not going to be able to create the kind of relationships that you want. And that's why so many people go through the patterns of the same type of relationships over and over and over again, because they have these underlying beliefs about their value and the sort of connection that they're worthy of that they haven't addressed. And so in this course, like, we start off at the foundational belief level and get you to identify and flip your beliefs through a framework that I created to help you do that. Because our beliefs, for most of us, are an invisible box.
They run the
People
show.
don't know.
Totally.
They don't know. They don't know what their beliefs are. So we go through that process in a container, and I do group coaching live with the group. We have over 1,000 women in the Facebook group. It's an awesome group. And twice a week, I get on there and I do group live coaching, video coaching with you to support you in working through whatever blocks you're having. Then we go through your connection style, your attachment style, your personality type, and what that means about how you connect with other people in the world. And that's a huge game changer for a lot of women, because they haven't looked at that, you know. And if you're not connecting with people in a meaningful way, maybe you're not aware of the differences between what you value and how you connect and how they connect. You got to meet other people where they're at. Right.
Totally.
And then we end with a full process to help you recognize your values and your vision for your life and your relationships and start working towards that. And so really the course, it lays a foundation and it gives you a blueprint for the sort of life and relationships you want.
So
and you get
awesome.
me there. You get there with you every step of the way.
Yeah, totally. And look, this is completely risk-free. You can try it, see if it's for you. It's free. If you get chosen to be part of it, you're going to be able to spend some time with Matt and see how you vibe with him. But I know a lot of you are vibing with him here. I appreciate it. There's a lot of us here. Thanks for just giving us your time and attention. There's a question here. How do you suggest asking if someone you're in a relationship with suddenly feels like they are friend zoning you? So I think this experience is quite common, right? Where you're like, we're kind of going along, right? But rather than it kind of like the relationship's progressing, we sort of like hit that plateau, and then I actually notice they're less in connection, they're less in contact, and they're less responsive with communication. In this particular instance, it's also a long distance relationship, but I think it applies actually whether it's distance or not. What do you recommend a woman doing in that situation if she is accurately seeing that the connection has actually been diminishing?
Well, I mean, I would come back to, this was a client that I was working with. I would come back to what's the status of the polarity in your relationship? Are you in your feminine? Is he in his masculine? And are you being that spontaneous, inviting, dynamic force? Are you, through the way you're showing up to him, continually in the practice of setting him free and inviting him to be, dynamic and connected with you? Like, I always invite, especially in a long distance relationship like this.
I think the bar's higher in long distance.
Yeah, there's no place where you get to be more conscious with the way you connect with your partner than in a long distance situation, right? And you want to be continually in long distance relationships having plans of cool, fun, exciting things that are coming next, right? Inviting him to make those plans. Like, you get to continue if men are pattern driven creatures, right? And we have a tendency to get locked in patterns of behavior. And so you as a woman get to be a loving interruption to the patterns and cycles and sequences that men get locked in. We get stuck in loops with stuff, so interrupt us, in whatever way is fit. Like if we come home from work and you're, naked in the kitchen, you have interrupted that pattern for us. That is an interruption. Like invite us to, like, say you want to go on an adventure. Be like, I don't care where we go, but this weekend we're not staying in the zip code. We're getting out of the zip code and we're going somewhere else. Like invite him to plan an adventure. Like just you got to interrupt the pattern and reestablish the polarity. Go back to that kernel of what was it at the beginning? What was it that created that initial spark that got you into a relationship in the first place? And how can you step back into embodying that? A lot of times that's the problem, is we get because life gets in the way.
Yeah,
we get pulled away from what brought us together in the first place.
Yeah, I get it. I like what you're advocating for there. Yeah, totally. People are commenting here. It's amazing how far relationships have come. It used to be women were more of the mystery, and now we have role reversal. I'm not sure why this is. It seems like we have to dissect everything now. What do you think about that? Because I know that in the the sort of coaching, therapy, development world, there can be a lot of wanting to understand things, pause realities. Now you've got to understand attachment. Now you've got to understand polarity. Now you've got to understand your, Myers-Briggs. You've got to get your Enneagram type. You've got to get, you taught me a model earlier that I hadn't even heard of, and I'm pretty into types and models. Like, is there some sort of point at which we sort of say, hey, all that stuff's great, but just sort of hold it lightly. And actually what you're talking about, I think, is just really tending to the sort of the foundational dynamic and naming what you want and taking a stand for that. Like, at what point do you sort of say, hey, a bit less analysis and a bit more, let's get in our bodies?
And that's the thing. That's exactly, well, right there. That last sentence you said pretty much sums it up. Like the whole way to be effective in relationship is to get out of your head and get into your body and pay attention to how you feel and create a good feeling dynamic with your partner. And a lot of the ways that we can establish that is by knowing ourselves and knowing our partner in a deep way, which is what all of this head stuff is for, right? But once we understand who we are, what we need to be happy, and how we connect, and we know the same things about our partner, which we establish through communication, right? We got to have that stuff in place,
Totally.
Then we get to just let go of all the theory and just dance. Like when you're dancing with somebody, you're not sitting there being like, okay, left foot, right foot, do this, bend back, At a certain point, you've learned the moves and all you're doing is flowing with the person that you're connected to. And I mean, relationship, polarity, it is a dance. Like you learn the moves so that you don't step on the other person's foot. Then you just fucking relax and just be in the experience with the partner. Like jazz improvisation. Yeah, and improvise and have fun. And if one person steps on the other person's foot, laugh and move past it. Right? I mean, like, it's so important to like stop taking everything so seriously and allow this to be fun. Because if we get so caught up in, every person we date has to be a baby daddy audition, and I'd be constantly afraid of getting hurt, and we take all this stuff into the process, it saps all the joy and the fun and the freedom out of the process, and then it doesn't create a dynamic, expansive situation.
Yeah.
So we're wired to make each other happy is another thing. Like fundamentally, we got tens of thousands of years of evolution where we are fundamentally wired to make each other happy if we can just get out of our way and just be in connection with each other.
Yeah. I mean, I'm imagining that most of us want that, right? Most of us want to be able to just be fun and light and playful. And then sometimes, life shows up, right? And we get triggered or we get contracted, or we have to feel things that we don't want to feel, or maybe the initial connection was really hot, and then actually as we get like more deep into life together and schedules and realities, that sometimes it becomes harder to show up in that way. My imagination hearing you talk is that you have quite a lot of access to that perspective of like, hey, we trod on each other's feet, don't worry about it too much. Obviously, as we get into deeper commitment in relationship and we're now depending on each other for more things, right? Maybe we're sharing space, resources, co-parenting, yada, yada, yada. Sometimes that thing seems to become harder. And I'm curious if you've got anything to advise the person who's like, oh, I remember that. Yeah, we had that 5 years ago. But actually, now today, it's like, God, it's kind of got a bit sticky and stodgy. And it's not so easy just to be light about it. Because I actually, if I'm really honest, I don't feel like I've had my needs met for quite a while here. And I don't even now know how to go about getting my needs met. Because I think for a lot of us, if we don't have our needs met, it's really hard to be playful, right? Because we're like, oh my God, I don't feel heard, but let me be playful, and how to be playful about that. I'm just curious because I sense you might have quite a good access to this perspective.
Yeah, and I think what happens a lot of time is that life will get in the way and will pull us away from the foundation of connection that brought people together in the first place, right? And that's why being able to hit the reset button, and that's why all these tools are so important, not so we can be obsessing over them all the time, but just so we can use them when needed to sort of like course correct. This is about course correction, right? Like you're on a path with somebody at a certain point. Sometimes people get diverted or one person diverts off, right?
Yeah, and then you grow in different directions.
What tools do we? Yeah, and so then what tools do we have to course correct and come back together, or evaluate if that's the best course of action? Sometimes people grow out of connection with each other, and that also happens. And it's important to be able to evaluate your relationship and look at, okay, how did things get off course? What do I need to feel fulfilled in connection with this person? How can I communicate those needs? Because if you're not feeling heard, if your needs aren't being met, you got to start off by asking yourself, does my partner know what they are?
Right.
Have I been active in continuing to communicate? And you can't say, oh, well, I communicated him once 3 years ago, so he should just remember forever. No. You get to continue, you get to create a continuum of communication between you and your partner where you're continually checking in with each other. Because a lot of times this divergence between partners happens because we just stop talking to each other in a deep and meaningful way.
Right.
And so like you can't, just let that part go because it feels like work and you just want to go off and do whatever, because life will pull people apart, if you don't continually check in, keep talking about what you need with each other.
Absolutely. Well, dude, we've been going here. It's an hour 45. I gotta go to the infrared sauna that I'm doing at the moment on the hour here. So
look at you, dude. We're twin spirits, bro. I ordered one of those infrared beds or infrared huge panels.
Wow. Cool.
Yesterday.
Cool.
Yeah, I'm excited to start light therapy.
Yeah.
I've been nerding out on it for weeks.
I can say that so far so good for me. It's been healthy and wholesome, and it's also just it's a good way of detoxing, which is one of the things that I'm doing at the moment.
Really?
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah, totally. I want to say thank you to everyone that's been here with us. For all the questions and comments, and we got to as many of those as we could. If you like what you're hearing from Matt and you want to spend more time with him, I want to encourage you to just click the link below. It's a zero risk thing. It's free. Check it out. We got some people asking us here about twin spirits, and someone's also asking about. They say they know that I'm a Cancer. Matt is also a Cancer, so. This is a bit of a Cancerian love fest here that you've been witnessing this afternoon.
We are 100% on this. We both are into infrared freaking light, okay? That's like a level of synchronicity that's super weird, in addition to our heart-centered Cancerian natures.
Totally. We've been told here that it's a great chat. Epsom salt float tanks are the bomb. Thank you, guys. Thank you all for being here. Thank you, Matt, for giving so generously of your time. I look forward to doing more with you in the future, having you back on the channel. And I hope I know a lot of people have said that they've signed up. I hope a lot of people take you up on the offer. Thanks for coming and sharing it with this community here. Thank you all. If you're long-term subscribers, appreciated it. If you aren't a subscriber, just go ahead and click subscribe, join the channel, continue to be part of the conversation. And we'll see you soon on a live stream or video like this. Matt, is there anything that you want to say just to kind of wrap up and sign off with people?
Well, I just want to say, first off, thank you, my friend, for having me on. It's been such an honor to
Thank you for breaking my live stream cherry on the channel. I appreciate it.
Woo!
Glad it was you.
First.
Yeah.
You'll never have another first, buddy. It's always going to be
me. You took my live stream, but you took it, Matt. Come on, man. You better show up at me. If you don't start returning my calls this weekend, come on.
I'm going to ghost you, bro. I'm ghosting you.
You probably will. Don't worry. I'm pretty secure. I'm pretty hard.
I know that you have your relationship. You have such a deep, connected relationship with your channel. That's such an honor for me that you shared me and my energy with your people. I understand because I care about my channel and my tribe also very deeply, and so I'm so privileged to be in front of all of you amazing ladies, and who knows, maybe a man or two. There might be a guy or two out there somewhere, right, that wasn't into this. And just know that if you connect with this course, if you connect with my content, with my energy, this course is going to be a great platform and a great opportunity for you to do inner work, right? Do inner work that's going to have a great impact on your relationships. I truly believe that all of our relationships are a mirror for our relationship with ourselves. And as we transform our relationship with ourselves, everything else transforms around us. So that's the foundation of my work. And I think that, Jack he gets it, right? He's in the same boat.
I think that's where you and I are kindred, right? Is this thing of relationship as path and relationship as, teaching you how to be more free and more loving, right? If you just sort of really boil it down, like how to be in your heart more, where you're not able to. And it surprises me every day, even as someone I think who's relatively in my heart a lot of the time. It's like, there are blocks to it. And we need other people. We need coaches. We need people to reflect back to us and hold us in that so that we get to be more free and more loving. Because at the end of the day, when we get to the end of our lives, it's probably going to be a lot about, how much are we loved, and so let's be loving.
How much could we, how much could we love ourselves? How much did we love other people? And what difference did we make in the lives of the people around us? And so let's just do as much as we can for as many people as we can. That's my purpose.
Totally. Awesome. Well, my wife has just come on. That's Alana's my wife, for those of you that don't know her. We'll bring her on the channel sometime. No, in a good way. Okay. So thanks everyone for being here. Thank you for your sign-offs, for your feedback on us. We appreciate it. And we're going to love you and leave you and see you soon.
All right. Bye, guys.
Cheers, guys. Bye for now.